get it all figured out? It's all crystal clear what's going to happen. Everybody was in pure agreement. Yes. All of the above. So I'll try to unpack some of it for you, and I suspect I'll barely be able to scratch the surface. So the chapter, this section that we read here, there's a lot of wild interpretations out there, and depending on who you read, you've probably got some really different ideas than some of the other folks in your group on what it all means. So, a couple of things just to keep in mind. First of all, before I jump in, this is awesome that we have this many people here so late in the study. So thank you guys for sticking with it. Because
we want to know how it ends.
Well, how it ends is pretty clear, right? The Rangers win the World Series, and Jesus, defeats the beasts and Satan. Diamondbacks and Astros, right? It's all there. So, but seriously, thanks for sticking with it. When we've done these series before, as we get past, Thanksgiving, the attendance is usually not quite what it is right at the moment. So thanks for sticking with it, and I hope that, the discussions, the individual reading, hopefully this is blessing you and enriching your walk with Christ. Okay, so let's jump in and we'll get it underway. We start with the King of Kings here. So we pick up in the second half of chapter 19. And we see Christ riding in on a white horse. We've seen him already riding on a white horse. Here he's wearing many crowns. This is a perfect reading for this week because, of course, on Sunday we celebrated Christ the King. And reflected together on the kingship of Jesus Christ. Again, the imagery here, what John is doing is circling back. And so many things that we read in this section, hopefully this felt familiar to you, the imagery you're reading, because almost all of it's appeared at some point already in the book of Revelation. He's got this sharp sword coming out of his mouth. We've seen this described both in chapter 1 and chapter 2 of Revelation. The sword, which is the Word of God. His Word is this a thing that cuts right through us, and undoubtedly you've had that experience reading the Bible or maybe sitting in church and felt convicted by some of the teaching of Jesus Christ. His teaching changes our lives, and it cuts through all the BS in our lives that we construct around ourselves and kind of the falsehoods that we tell ourselves. His Word is powerful, and so that's why we keep coming back to it. It's why we keep reading it. It's why we keep doing these studies, because it has the power to change our lives. On his robe and on his thigh is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And I did a lot of reading. I don't know if anybody went down the rabbit hole on why the robe and the thigh. Most of what I read was that the robe is on, it really should be translated on his thigh. And that this was a very common way in antiquity that equestrian statues, that was where the inscription of who the statue was located, that the robe would be on his thigh. I read a few other possible references to, because then you start Googling thigh in the Bible and just don't do it. If anybody wants to do extra credit, you can go Google thigh in the Bible and have fun with it. But most of what I read was just, this is his name, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And of course, if you've ever listened to Handel's Messiah, you probably got that in your head when you read this. The beasts, right? The beasts are thrown into the lake of fire. And again, the evil of this world is again defeated by Christ. Again, this is the major theme of the book of Revelation. We've seen this already. We're seeing it again. Again, John is using imagery over and over again to communicate this key central point that yes, while there is evil in the world, it is all defeated by Jesus Christ, right? And this ought to be a source of tremendous hope for everyone who follows Christ, that ultimately all the evil things of this world, and they're obvious and they're around us, are defeated by our Lord Jesus Christ. All right, and then we get to the 1,000 years. All right, so let's just talk for a minute about the 1,000 years, because this is where people go in all kinds of directions. I can say personally, for someone who grew up as an Episcopalian, Anglican, a lot of this was new to me within the time that I've been ordained, that there are other traditions that run way, way, way down the field with this 1,000-year thing. So there's three sort of main schools on this, and it is relevant. This is not just a kind of a theoretical, nice thing to know. It's relevant because so much of this continues to divide Christians, and so much of it informs, depending on what school you're in and how you want to do this, it will inform the entire view of the book of Revelation. Literally everything in the book of Revelation gets read through this lens of the 1,000 years, okay? So it is relevant for us just to spend a minute talking about. There are folks that are called premillennialists, there are folks that are called postmillennialists, and then everyone else is sort of in this category that they don't really want to identify as, they don't identify themselves as any of this, but what you would call amillennialists or amillennialists, okay? So the premillennialists believe that Jesus Christ is going to return physically to the earth. He's going to set up his throne in Jerusalem. That's where he's going to reign from, and he will reign for 1,365-day periods from Jerusalem, and then the end of the world will come. And of course, this the millennium happens before the end of the world, thus the pre, okay? So pre meaning before. The amillennialists understand that this is a symbolic number, and you read that in John Stott's description, which I added to, and this would be certainly the Anglican, Episcopalian, Lutheran, Catholic, Orthodox, kind of mainstream Christian understanding. Why is it that this one number would not be symbolic when we've spent so much time talking about how all the other numbers in the book of Revelation are symbolic? That's what the amillennialist would say. Again, this is what John Stott says in the study. This is what we're going to go with. But there are folks who would disagree with us on this. Then there's these postmillennialists, and essentially what they say is Christianity is going to reign for 1,000 years. All the nations will become explicitly Christian. They will pass Christian laws, etc. And then Christ will come after the millennium again, and the world will then end after this 1,000 years. Here's a fun little chart. There is the premillennialists don't agree with each other. And if you've ever seen this awesome movie, yeah, you want to see some good acting, you can watch that one. You know Nick Cage is going to deliver the goods. Or maybe you've read the books. Has anybody read the Left Behind books?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so the Left Behind folks are in this camp. And you got to do some fancy math to get to a lot of this, okay? You got to reread the entire book of Revelation with this in mind. So the premillennialists don't agree with each other. The cross here, everybody agrees that Jesus died on the cross. All Christians do. All of them believe that there's a final, last judgment that's coming. But what happens between those two periods is where these groups really tend to disagree. And there's all these very elaborate systems that are built on this. But essentially, in the Left Behind deal, Jesus comes and there's a rapture, right? So all the devout folks are gone, and then there's this long period of tribulation. And then they come back to earth and they reign with Christ in the millennium. And then the final judgment happens after Jesus, returns a third time in this system back. So again, you can develop all kinds of vast systems of how salvation will work, how judgment will work, how the end of the world will work, based on this number, 1,000, and it sends people down these long interpretive roads of how it's all going to work, and depending on who you're listening to, they'll just describe to you very matter-of-factly. Here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3, and this is how it's all going to work. When of course and they have signs associated with when it's coming and all the rest of it. And again, for us as we're reading this, what we want to try to remember is the mainstream Christian interpretation is that this 1,000-year number is symbolic of a long period of time. Okay, just like all of the other numbers in the book of Revelation. Should we just leave it on that slide for the rest of the lesson? Because it's so great. Did anybody see this Nick Cage performance of Left Behind? Highly recommend it, guys. Highly recommend it. There was one with Kirk Cameron as well. Maybe that was your preferred Left Behind. Okay. I haven't read the book, but I did give that. Premillennialism is the only one of those. There is a little bit of a precedent. So early in the church's history, so this is like 2nd century, St. Justin Martyr, St. Irenaeus, they both kind of thought that, okay, well, Jesus, he's going to come back, and he'll come back with his apostles, and he'll set up an earthly reign here on earth. And what they say is that, that Satan gets released. There's this fun part in the Revelation where the dragon's been all cooped up for so long, and then he gets to have, like a little field day that he gets to have. But just that this is so that Christ can slay him once for all. We read in Revelation 20, about the first death, second death, the first resurrection, the second resurrection, and the premillennialists, like Irenaeus and Justin Martyr say, this first resurrection happens at the beginning of the 1,000-year reign, and then the second at the end of time. Pretty quickly, basically all the other church fathers understand this to be symbolic, okay? So all of the key teachers who establish Christian doctrine in the conciliar phase of the church, when the church councils, the ecumenical councils are meeting, the Council of Nicaea, the Council of Chalcedon, all of those, the ones who understand that, hey, there needs to be an orthodox expression of Christian doctrine, all of them understand that this 1,000 years is symbolic, just like all of the other numbers of Revelation. The first resurrection that's talked about here, they say, is the particular judgment, right? So the soul is judged by Christ upon death, and those who are saved, their soul begins to inherit the eternal joys of heaven. And then the second resurrection is this general resurrection at the end of time, the one that we say we believe in the Nicene Creed. It's no mistake that it's in the Nicene Creed, because these are all the dudes that are helping to write the Nicene Creed, and again establish an orthodox understanding of Christianity and Christian doctrine. But that there's a general resurrection at the end of time. I do have time for questions on this. Just give me a second to keep explaining it. So, just to ferret out an example, St. Peter, he's obviously martyred, crucified upside down, and then his soul currently in heaven with Christ. The last great day when Christ comes again to judge the living and the dead, his body shall be raised to perfection. The Amillennialists would emphasize that Christ reigns in heaven now, and of course the precedent for that is over and over and over again in the Gospels. What does Jesus say? The kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom is here. So the kingdom is not a future reality, but it's one that Christ begins as he walks the earth. And he says, my kingdom is not of this world, right? Very clearly to Pontius Pilate, there as he's about to give his life for the life of the world. And so we want to emphasize that the kingdom of Christ is not going to be like this earthly kingdom where, again, like headquarters in the Old old city of Jerusalem for 1,000 years, the kingdom of Christ is something that is alive and well right at the moment, and you and I are citizens of it. Now, the pre- and post-millennialists will look at this and say, well, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Slow your roll, millennialists. We want you to look at Revelation 20, verse 3. The dragon's chained up, and we can't lead the nations astray. So, we can look around and we can see all kinds of bad things are going on in our world, and we can see all kinds of corrupt and unjust laws are happening around us. And so, if the millennium was now, how come? So this is how you get this pushback on well, no, if Christ is reigning, then why isn't everything just perfect and hunky dory and everybody's hugging one another? Why are people blowing each other up and all that? That's what the pre and the post folks are going to push back on. St. Augustine talks about this, and he basically says that that's what the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ does, is it binds the power of Satan. Satan's not running free in the world. The gospel is at hand, and those who embrace it live by a completely different way. Okay, so he's prevented, Satan is, from deceiving the nations, because the truth has come. The one who says, I am the way, the truth, and the life has come to in fact bind Satan permanently. And of course, yes, his deception continues, but the church, which continues the ministry of Jesus, that's what we think we're doing. And that self-understanding informs so much of what we do around here that this is not just kind of thinking nice thoughts about a guy who walked the earth 2,000 years ago, but literally we continue the mystical ministry of Jesus Christ through his mystical body, the church, every day. That's what we think we're doing. It's continuing his ministry through his body, the church. And so this pushes back Satan and his deception through our witness, our proclamation. And of course, this is a ministry that all of us are called to push back Satan, to beat down Satan under our feet, to call out the lies of Satan, and to proclaim the truth of Jesus Christ. Then Satan gets a fun little get out of jail free card. Again, this is something that we should again see, why? Why does Christ reign for 1,000 years, and then Satan gets to kind of have a little fun, weekend out of jail? Well, again, if you're reading this as chronology, right? You're reading this as chronological events that happen. Well, then it's really completely impossible to understand that, right? But again, this is characteristic of what Revelation is specializing in these cycles, right? In this recapitulation, John is seeing events over and over again. He's using symbols to communicate eternal truths, right? And so what's he saying? Well, there's this order and chaos struggle. There's this light and darkness struggle. There's this goodness and evil struggle that continues to be part of the present reality until the very last great day when Christ shall come again. Okay, so that's what that's all about. You see Gog, and who's from the land of Magog. This is a reference to Ezekiel 38 and 39. So I don't know if anyone went back and read Ezekiel 38 and 39 in reference to these chapters, but there's a lot of Ezekiel 38 and 39 in the section that we just read together. Gog is referred to as the Prince of Rosh, and so in Ezekiel 38, so you can read a lot of fun stuff about how Rosh sounds like Russia, and then you can go down that rabbit hole if you want to read all about how Russia is the land of Satan and will usher in the very end of all things. So there's a lot of literature out there about that one if you want to go read that. Certainly not endorsing that, just identifying that, again, you can run with all of this in a lot of directions if you want to, and a lot of people do. The key thing to notice here is like, so there's this huge battle, and Stott has this in the notes, and I think this is maybe the most helpful thing in all of the notes is like, you're expecting this knockdown, drag out, right? It got them surrounded. God's people are surrounded, and all the nastiness is about to go to battle with all that which is good, and then there's just nothing happens. Like, there's just no battle at all. Just and what's it meant to communicate? That evil is nothing in the face of good. You know, evil has no power whatsoever, and this is the Christian teaching about good and evil. Is it's not like good and evil are on the same plane at all. Evil is just the absence of good. Evil has no power whatsoever. That's what St. Augustine spends so much of his time thinking about. So it's not like there's this equal footing between good and evil. Just evil is only nothing, really, in comparison to the goodness of God. Then we read about the final judgment. The books are open, the book of life, which is referred to, you guessed it, 7 times in the book of Revelation. Right? This symbolizes the perfect mind of God, that God understands and knows our actions, and that our actions matter to him. So remember, number 7 is the number of perfection or completeness in the book of Revelation, so it's not a mistake that it's referred to 7 times. The dead stand before the white throne. Of course, we've seen white goes with Jesus Christ. He has the white hair in chapter 1, the white robe, riding on a white horse, and then all those who belong to Christ also get a white robe. Each person is judged, did you notice, by what they have done? Right? So our actions do matter to God, and we read that. That's the biblical way of understanding. We talked about this on Sunday too with the parable of the sheep and the goats that we were talking about in church, that our actions do matter. They say a lot about our faith, and our action or our lack of action in the name of Jesus Christ makes an eternal difference. That's emphasized here when he says, that each person's judged by what they had done, mirroring the teaching of our Lord in his parable of the sheep and the goats. And then, of course, those who are not found in the book of life are thrown into the lake of fire with death itself, right? And so all things are ended here at this last great day, where death itself is taken away. So a lot of really great imagery here, and I think from my vantage point, a lot of it is just repeating what we've already heard. It's sort of the Dora the Explorer approach, where they just say it over and over and over again, and you're just like, I don't know, please stop talking. But like we hear repetition indicates mastery here. So when he's singing something, and then he's singing it again in a slightly different way, and then again in a slightly different way, what we are clearly left with is this very strong message that there shall be a time, this last great day, when evil and death shall be no more, and it will all have been fully conquered by our Lord Jesus Christ. Okay, who has a question? Who did I confuse a lot?
So all these good and bad?
Yeah, right. So I mean, it doesn't unpack what it means, but that's what the judgment is based on, what they had done, right? That's what chapter 20 says there. So our actions matter, right? And if we have a robust faith, then we will be living it out in the way that Christ asks us to live it out, living the life of virtue and demonstrating that faith day by day.
So, you're saved by the grace of God, not by your works. Your works are a reflection of your faith. They go hand in hand. If you are truly a believer, have the works, they're there.
That's right.
Okay, so, I got a little confused because, we've had the first resurrection, second resurrection,
Yep.
and first and seconds of all these things. But we've come to the final judgment, we haven't had a first, second, or third judgment beforehand.
Yeah, so
Oh, yeah.
we were getting that just a second
It's a
ago.
little confusing.
So, again, you're going to get a lot of varying answers on this, but kind of the mainstream Christian teaching is that, there's a particular judgment and then there's a general judgment.
And that's the first I had.
So each soul is judged, upon the time we die, there's what's called a particular judgment. John's got to face the music, if you will, right? Like I've done some things and not done some things, right? And then there's this last great day when Christ shall come again and he'll judge both the living and the dead, right? And that's the general judgment.
And that's where we're judged on our deeds.
Yes?
Are we judged on our deeds the first, on our particular?
Both, right? Yeah. So like it's like two sides of the same coin, right? Like that's the key way. Like so much misunderstanding about this because some people, would have you believe that there's nothing to good works. That this is all about just faith. And of course, the Epistle of St. James makes this incredibly clear that faith without works is dead. So I mean, the two things go hand in hand. You can't
separate them.
and there aren't any good works without faith either, right? Like so anything that appears to be righteous is declared empty unless we are in Jesus Christ, right? So faith naturally leads to good works. Those two things go hand in hand. A person who says they have faith but does nothing doesn't have it, right? It's dead. That's what St. James said. Wendell.
So then the criminal on the cross hanging next to Christ who was saved,
He has faith.
but he apparently didn't have very good works leading up to getting hung on the cross, though.
Right. We didn't have a lot of time to go like, humble the little lady across the street at that point, right?
Hold on a minute,
Kind of pinned down. But he says, remember me when you come into your kingdom, right? So he expressed his faith in Jesus Christ, and what does Christ say back to him? Today you'll be with me in paradise, right? So the promise of Christ to the penitent thief was, in response to his faith, an invitation to live with him in paradise, which is precisely the hope that every single one of us have.
Well, didn't he also say to the other thief that was on the cross, this man, this perfect man, whatever he said, he sort of tried to convince the other
guy to
hey,
get with the program, buddy.
right, yeah, look,
What do you gotta lose?
but isn't that works?
That's work.
That's, hey, it's gonna die.
It's good stuff. It's certainly worth reflecting on. Yes.
So, we went through a millennium, this 1,000-year symbolic period of time. The church, we are there, and Satan is bound up, not able to deceive. And at some point he'll get out for a little while. That's pretty scary, I think. See all the bad stuff going on right now, and Satan's not even a part of it.
So I would say it's more of again, this is a symbol of this constant struggle that is going on between the powers of light and the powers of darkness. And yes, the powers of darkness are pretty easy to observe. You open up, any newspaper or turn on whatever your favorite cable news station is, and they'll show you all the powers of darkness real quick. So it's an image, right, of this constant struggle between the powers of light and darkness, and it's a reminder to every single one of us that, Jesus says, you are the light of the world, right? So who pushes the darkness back that comes into people's lives? You and I do, and we got a world around us that's really, really suffering and
We're
struggling.
seeing so many churches going backwards.
Yes. And when the church
down.
And that's a real concern that the church is weakened, right? And so when the church is mission and ministry and proclamation get weakened, then what's the natural result of that? Right? The rise of darkness. And the church is so deeply confused in our own era about so much of the moral life that Christ has called us to live. And you've got Christian leaders who are saying black is white and white is black, and things are backwards, and it's going in the wrong direction in so many ways. And so that what is that a sign? Well, we're seeing what we're supposed to do here, right? In response to falsehood, we are supposed to be people of the truth.
It just
And
seems
so
like,
that proclamation is really important.
it just seems like Satan is going full bore right now, not bound up, unable to deceive. And
He's
that's
bound
where
by,
I'm confused right now.
well,
It
he's
seems like-
bound by Jesus Christ, right? Like Satan
Yeah.
is trampled under his foot and defeated forever. He cannot win. That's the point of what we're reading,
Right.
for sure.
Right.
So we should not lose hope even if things look bleak, right? And we're not going to win that battle, but Jesus is.
Hence the road dipped in blood. Yeah.
Indeed.
So we just for repenting sins, like if when we repent our sins, remember, it used to say like that, never had.
Yes, our robes are made white in the blood of the Lamb, right? So yes, God will actually forgive us when we do repent. Okay, we're past time. I know there's a lot more fun discussion about this, but we're at 8:05 already, and some of you can go to bed or go to the bar. I don't know where you're headed. Let's stand and we'll have prayer. If you can stay after and help push some tables, because we hang out with a bunch of 2 and 3-year-olds on Tuesdays and Thursdays.